Hi guys, it's ASBYT and this is the Google Pixel 5. Now, you've probably already heard and seen quite a lot about this phone already, leaks, unboxing videos, etc. But I've been using it on and off for the last couple of days and I wanted to give you a slightly more in-depth first impressions because there's quite a lot to take in here, and hopefully this will give you a clearer picture of what's really going on, because with the Google Pixel 5, they've really blurred the lines a little bit. Let's dive. So firstly, if you're interested in what Google actually sent over, it was this little bad boy here, and it contained the Pixel 5 here and the Google Pixel 4a 5G. And I have already reviewed the 4a, but if you're interested in this model, then let me know in the comments and I will do stuff on that as well. But if you're interested in what was in the Pixel 5 unboxing, we have, of course, throwing paperwork on the floor, which it did come with, and you have the charger and we have the charging cable. And it's an 18-watt fast charger, so not lightning quick, but still decent, and more on battery in a minute. And that's pretty much it. Very, very simple unboxing experience with your Google Pixel 5. And then we also had a Pixel 5 case and the Pixel Buds. And again, let me know in the comments if you want to see me review those as well. Now, from a hardware point of view, the Pixel 5 is very in keeping with previous devices. In fact, from the back, the only real way to know at a glance that this is the latest Pixel flagship is this sort of sage green colouring, which is of course one of the two new colours alongside just black, and the fingerprint scanner, which has made a reappearance after being discontinued on the Pixel 4. It's a strange decision, in my eyes, to go back to a rear-mounted fingerprint scanner and not continue with facial recognition, or indeed put the fingerprint scanner in the display like we see on nearly every other current Android flagship smartphone. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I always quite like the scanner on the back of the Pixel 3. It's very fast, reliable, probably more so than the ones in the display, so even though perhaps it doesn't look quite as futuristic, there's no real problems here. In terms of appearance, we have the exact same square camera setup on the Pixel 5 as we did on the Pixel 4, and we have a similar 2-lens layout, but this time we have the fun 16 megapixel ultra wide angle lens to go alongside the primary 12 megapixel shooter, and we therefore this time lose the telephoto lens. Now, knowing how good the camera software is on all Pixel phones, I definitely prefer the fact that we've got an ultra wide angle lens than a 2x telephoto, because I don't really feel you're losing out too much on that zoom capabilities, and the portrait mode, again, knowing how good the software is. In terms of photos, you know, like with every Pixel phone, combined with the endless power of the latest and greatest software, you are going to get some of the very best photos, especially portrait shots, going. Pixel phones have always been legendary in this department, but apparently they've made a few changes to make them even better. HDR Plus has had an upgrade, of course we will judge that in our full camera review, and they've also added exposure bracketing for even clearer and sharper photos. Oh, and the night sight software is now available on portrait mode as well, which is great, and they've introduced a new portrait light feature. This allows you to illuminate the face of a subject even when they're backlit, so now you won't have to worry about exposure. For example, you can still get that really nice, vibrant, bright backdrop and still have the face not too dark. Great, good touch. And the best thing about it? It's backwards compatible. So if you've taken a photo anytime in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and you notice that issue, you've got a really nice backdrop, but the foreground is too dark, you can now illuminate that subject and completely transform old photos, which is pretty cool. You can also use the ultra wide angle lens for video too, which is a nice touch, and you can shoot up to a max 4K at 60 frames a second, which is fairly standard now on smartphones. There are 3 new stabilization modes for video. We have active, locked, and cinematic pan, which basically stabilizes motion and reduces the speed by 2 times for that really nice slow motion dreamy feel to your footage. This is going to be great for those of you who want to create that kind of footage, but until now have struggled with slow-mo modes or don't really know how to do that in the edit. It just makes things a lot easier for the average everyday consumer, I suppose. Very quickly, if you're enjoying this video so far, a sub would be awesome. We've also had quite a dramatic change on the front on the Pixel 5 from last year's model as well. So now we have a 6-inch Full HD Plus HDR10 Plus OLED display with a 90Hz refresh rate. I still stand by the fact that the jump from 60Hz to 90 was a more substantial, more important jump than 90 to 120, and with the Pixel 5's 8GB of RAM, it still feels really nice and smooth when scrolling through apps and menus, etc. Also, due to the modest size, by today's behemoth standards anyway, it really feels refreshingly easy to use with one hand. It's also really refreshing to use a phone that's flat on the back as well as the front, while still providing a slightly rounded aluminium frame as to not cut into your hands. Surprisingly, this combination in smartphones is quite rare. The display overall is really nice. It's bright enough with great viewing angles, it's vibrant, and the bezels are completely symmetrical all the way around, with the only obstruction to your viewing pleasure being this punch hole cutout which houses the 8MP selfie shooter. And you know, even without a review, Pixel selfies are up there with the best on the market, and this will be no different. Now, because the notch and the big bezels of previous generations have now gone from the top of the Pixel 5, it does also mean we do lose some pretty impressive tech along with it. The Soli radar and motion sense features, which were massive talking points for Google last year, have now been completely removed. And this is a little bit strange when you take into account the time, money, and effort of putting them into the Pixel 4 in the first place. Introduced in 2019, gone in 2020. It's possible the general buying consumer weren't quite as sold on those ideas as Google were themselves, and because it was expensive and difficult to include in this new form factor, they've decided to ditch it. Maybe it's beauty over brains this time around, unlike previous generations. I, for one, even though I was impressed by and could see the potential in the future in other products for those types of technologies, I would pick this design and not those features every time. I've been crying out for a Pixel phone that looks like this for the last 2 years. I said in my Pixel 4 video they needed to update the design and they needed to give us a better battery experience, and while we may be 2 years later than expected, they finally joined the party, because we now have as well a 4080 mAh battery capacity cell in here, which is pretty impressive considering the compact size of this phone. And already in the time that I've been using it, without going into too much detail because of embargoes, etc., it feels like it's not quite the battery drainer that we saw on previous models. So as impressed as I am in my first impressions of the Google Pixel 5, let's jump back to my original point. Why do I feel that this has blurred the lines this year? Well, it does so in two main ways. Firstly, it seems that Google are getting more and more Apple-like with every new Pixel launch. And that might not necessarily be a bad thing, just not very Android. Hear me out. Apple iPhone launches are notorious for providing as little spec information as possible, instead focusing mainly on a user experience angle, using highly emotive scenarios and language. And the Google Pixel 5 launch was the most Apple-esque live launch I've ever seen from an Android smartphone. There was no mention of an actual chipset, it just said Qualcomm Snapdragon, or hardly any specs at all. So the near entirety of the presentation was based around a lot of new features, new software, and solving real-world average consumer user problems. And I feel in doing so, Google are looking to appeal to a wider average consumer market than the traditional Android tech head. Because the average consumer simply does not care or does not want to care about how many gigawatts something is. Gigawatts. Such examples of features that were mentioned include the Extreme Battery Saver, which allows you to keep on apps you frequently use and pause ones you don't. And Google have said this can give you up to 48 hours of battery life. There's also the Hold For Me feature, where Google Assistant will wait in line for you and alert you when someone comes on the phone if you're phoning the bank or a utility company, etc. They also, like Apple, encourage you to join in with the software ecosystem. So they offer you 3 months worth of YouTube Premium, Stadia Pro, and 100 gigabytes of storage on Google One, as well as Play Pass and Play Points if you buy a new Pixel 5. Again, I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying it's blurring the lines of who their target audience is, or was, or could be in the future. For me, it feels like it's a kind of focused Google attack on some areas of the Apple market, trying to pinch some of that iPhone SE, iPhone 11 share. The second way I feel Google have blurred the lines with the Pixel 5 is I don't feel that Google really necessarily know whether this is meant to be a premium phone or a mid-range phone. It's kind of somewhere in between. It's a pre-mid-range. I've just invented a whole new sector in the market. Pre-mid-range. So what do I mean by this? Well, the Pixel 5 has a premium build, a premium camera experience, premium features such as 5G, great stereo speakers, wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, an IP68 rating, high refresh rate OLED panel, and the very latest in Android 11 software with a promise of 3 years of security and OS updates. But it's only Full HD+, there's no option of 4K or Quad HD+, there's no expandable storage, it's UFS 2.1 I believe, so not the latest there. There's no 4K video on the front camera, and the chip that it's using is not the latest and greatest from Qualcomm. It's not the Snapdragon 865 Plus or even the 865 from earlier this year. It's in fact the 765G, which we've seen in the likes of the mid-range OnePlus Nord. So there's definitely a change of direction from Google away from the most expensive, highest end Qualcomm chip, but I think it might be a smart move. The improvements in the latest 700 series chips and the huge price difference between the ranges means that Google can pass that saving on to you. And don't get me wrong, the 765G is not a bad chipset at all. In fact, it's actually quite a brilliant mid-range SoC. Designed to be the kind of affordable version of the 865 really. And with 8GB of RAM, the Pixel 5 is going to be powerful, quick and snappy and great for gaming too, which ties nicely in with the Stadia stuff. And the final confirmation of this switch from Google, away from the ultra high-end premium bracket of smartphone to more of a mid-range beast is, as we've mentioned, price. The Pixel 5 is available to order in the UK from just £599. I think $699 in the US, not sure about other regions right now. And I think that price is brilliant. I think they've really hit the nail on the head. The way I see it, I feel that we've asked for quite a lot from Google over the last few years, and it didn't really feel like they were listening. And as a result of that, without delving into figures too much, because I don't want to get things completely wrong, I would imagine sales figures have kind of coincided with that. I don't feel Pixel phones have delivered in the sales department as well as Google might have hoped. But with the Pixel 5, apart from a couple of minor things, which we'll get to in my full review, they've definitely gone a long way to rectifying those issues. We asked for a full screen display. Check. We asked for a decent battery size for the size of the phone. Check. We asked for an ultra-wide-angle lens. Check. We asked for a affordable price. Check. I feel, even though subtle, Google have really hit most points with the Pixel 5 that most people were asking for. Whether that transfers into sales, I don't know, but it's nice to see that Google are finally giving us a phone that ticks most boxes. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of the Google Pixel 5. Is it a phone that you are looking to possibly get, and for what reasons? Or is there certain things that they haven't delivered on that you need and therefore not going to get it? Let me know. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like and share if you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and love everything tech. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, BYT. Peace out.